Yesterday I tuned in on EWTN at 11:30 to watch the installation of the 9th Bishop of the Diocese of Winona, Rochester, Minnesota, the popular evangelist Bishop Robert Barron, who for the last 25 years has stormed our culture with word on fire. And for the last 7 years has been one of the auxiliary bishops in Los Angeles, the largest diocese in the United States of America. So he went to the southernmost part of the state of Minnesota that borders on Iowa. 137,000 Catholics to be the 9th bishop. It was a most joyful occasion. I was glad I tuned in. Last year, he gave an address at St. Thomas University in Houston, Texas, Bishop Barron. And he talked about the virtue of magnanimity, the quality of having a great soul. He said, magnanimity, by the very nature it denotes, stretches forth the soul to do great things. And he challenged the graduates to develop a great soul for whatever world they enter. And Bishop Barron said, the literature of our world is filled with stories of people who spend their lives satisfying their egos, building up wealth, pleasure, power, honors, but neglecting the development of their souls. Perhaps you've met such people in your life. They glitter on the outside, but they're atrophied and spiritually dead on the inside. Perhaps we've encountered the opposite people in our lives, who have very little in the eyes of the world, or the world's measurements and standards, but are vibrantly alive, spiritually on fire, and have cultivated their souls to greatness. Today's first reading, King Solomon. He's credited for having written the book of Ecclesiastes. He's one of the richest people who have ever lived in history. He is the epitome of having it all. 700 wives, 300 concubines, myriads of palaces. Now he's at the end of his life and he's reflecting about life. What's it all about? Am I going to give it to my kids and my grandkids? These smucks will be ungrateful. They'll be ungrateful. They won't even appreciate how hard I worked. So he gives us first-hand insight and first-hand knowledge. And he says, vanity of vanities, all things in life are vanity. 39 times he tells us it. That life is a bunch of bubbles. You know what blowing a bubble is. It's gone instantly. It's transitory. It's like the wind. It's a breath. He says that everything in life is like a bubble. It's here in an instant, and it's gone like a firecracker. So why worry about it? And Jesus says, what does it profit a person who amasses every good in the world and destroys and forfeits their salvation in the process? We live in a culture that values wealth more than anything else. Look at the craze of the lottery that just took place. Little has changed, huh? In the history of humankind. In 1850, St. John and Henry Newman said, all bow before wealth. Wealth is that to which the multitude of peoples pay an instinctive homage. They measure happiness by wealth, and by wealth they measure respectability. It is the homage resulting from a profound faith that with wealth we can do many things. This parable of today's gospel is very relevant for our day today. Jesus tells us that we should care for the poor. That's the message of the gospel. We should evangelize the world. And we should worship God in the depths of our hearts. Unless we get a greedy, covetous heart. The rich fool, he lacks personal insight. He has spiritual blindness. He doesn't see his social responsibility. And he's warped with himself. It can happen to us all. Jesus allows us to get a glimpse into this person, into his inner dark workings of a fool's heart. So you're going to have ample goods laid up for you for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. One of the biggest businesses in America today is storage space. We got stuff on stuff on stuff on stuff on stuff. It's supposed to cushion us from the harsher realities of life. Basta, 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 the Italians will say. Enoughness, enoughness. Can we ever have enough? It's like salt water. There's an insatiable desire for us. If our desires, our Western culture mantra is more is better. More money in the bank, more accounts, more power, more control, more looks, more health insurance, more securities. The list is endless, friends. You know it. The more you have, the more you want. Your stuff begins to own you, and the more stuff imprisons you. Do you believe that? That all the goods of this world, I'm not saying they're bad, friends. They're nice to have. We can appreciate them. But they're not the ultimate good, who is God. And the goal of life is not the material world. The goal of being a Christian is to align our lives with God's values, God's priorities, God's desires, God's actions for our lives. True riches are the things when we go through death we'll receive in heaven, because we detach ourselves from things of earth and we're generous to others. Those are the only things we take with us in the next life. The things we've given to others in this life. Do you believe that? It doesn't mean we shouldn't strive to be the best we can be. Raise the best family, children, grandchildren. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have great progress in our business or in our careers and do the best. That's not what I'm saying, the gospel's saying. But we must not allow money to be our God or our goal. It can harden us to the sufferings and the plights of others. It can insulate us from the colder realities of life, the disparities that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. There's an unequal distribution of wealth, and human poverty racks us in every shape, size, and shadow. We live in a society driven and seared by selfishness and self-advancement. But the gospel demands us that we welcome all, care for the marginalized, share our goods, like the very first Christian community. Never underestimate the power of our faith. It's the greatest treasure we'll ever receive. It's a priceless gift. It's a passport to heaven, but we must use it daily on earth. No poll or no lottery, no earthly treasure will ever stand the test that moth and rust and stolen thieves and robbers can't destroy. And it can be lost in an instant, and I see it every single day as a hospital chapter. What really matters. Every blessing we receive from God is an opportunity for greater giving to others. If God gives us health and our strength, then use it to help the sick and the impaired. If God gives you love, then use it to help the lonely and the rejected. If God gives you influence, then use it to help the powerless and the oppressed. There is always something to give to the Lord. You know, I got a phone call yesterday of someone dear to me, 86 years old, that passed away. She was a teacher, she was a principal, she was a superintendent. She gave her whole life to education. You know, she had Steeler tickets, so she was part of the world, but her whole life was faith. And one of the teachers in the school, she was the last number of years, she was just free, given her time, being the dean of the Catholic school at St. Patrick's in Canada. And one of her teachers, you know, the Catholic school teachers don't make a whole lot. And one of the school teachers was going to get married. And she said, well, where are you going to live? He says, I don't know. She says, I have an acre here in Canada. You want to build a house on that acre? She says, I don't have long to live. What am I going to do with my acre? He said, well, sure. She gave him an acre. He called me up today and said, her dream was to build a log cabin and live there in her log cabin. She bought it in 1970. Yesterday she died. I called her last week and told her our second child was just born. And she said, I'm filled with joy. Let us never define ourselves by our salary, our amassing of material possessions, or the accomplishments that we do here on this earth. Let us realize that if we spend less, we might enjoy more. If we live simply, others may simply live. If we reject greed, we can grow in God's grace. Let us prepare to move from this earthly dwelling to what God has prepared for us in heaven, rather than building bigger barns and bigger storage bins here on earth. Do you have your priorities aligned with God's? The only thing we bring with us to heaven are the things we've given away, because our treasure is being attached